Alright, now we're over at the lathe, and I've got a bit of a different camera angle this time than normally. Usually I have it zoomed right down in on the work and you see chips being made. But what I'm trying to do in this video, a little bit more so than I have in others, is give you an idea of what's going on with the hands and the handles on the equipment. So I'm backed out a little bit further than normal here. But what we have is a piece of 1/2 inch stock. Again, this is 10/18, just like the body was. This piece is a little less than 4 inches long. Plans call for 3 3/4. We'll face it off as necessary when we get down to that point. But what I'm going to do now is just install it in the chuck up close and put us just a lead hole in the end down here so that we'll have something to hold it with as we're turning it and also threading it. Okay. Now what I want to do is take this piece back out, because what we're going to do is hold it from this end down here. And before I start any turning, I just want to put a tiny little witness mark on this end. The amount that we want left hanging out the end is 0.625. That will not be turned or threaded. I'll zero out my Z-axis and come into 625. And again, just put just a little witness mark there. Now we'll turn this around in the collet. We'll put our live center in the tailstock. And we're going to turn this down . Alright, the largest diameter here is 5/16, which 5/16 equates to 0.312, 3125. We'll call it 313. So what I'm going to do is start out first and get a starting cut on this. First I will set my carriage stop so that I don't go past that witness mark. And engage the feed. Alright, I'm going to zero out the x-axis there for that mark, for that cut. And I'll take a measurement on that. I am going to bring the camera around though so you got a little better view. So we've made that initial cut on here. We'll take our measurement. All right, that's 486. Now, just like the DRO on the mill, the touch DRO that I have on the lathe, again, this is the touch DRO product running on an Android tablet. Now, I zeroed out the X after I made that first cut, so I knew I had a good clean surface to start with. If I long press, I get to set a dimension. And what I want is 0.313, which is our target, minus 0.486, which is what it currently is. So I need to work this number down now to 0. 173 is the difference, so I need to work that down to 0. Now, as I'm watching my DRO up there, as just showed you, I'm going to work this down, the axis or that value down to 0. Alright, I'm taking it down to my 0 now. We were shooting for 313. We got 311 and a half, 312. So we're in a thousandths. All right. Now, that shoulder that's right there, the plans say that our threaded portion needs to be 2.625. So I'll zero out the Z-axis. I'm on this shoulder right here. 2.625. Put a tiny little witness mark right there. And at the same time, I'm going to bring my carriage stock down to bump the carriage. Now, I'm not going to swing the camera back around, but as I said, this was 312. Now, the remainder of this we want to cut down to 250 thousandths. So I'm going to go back, long press on the X, set dimension of 0.250 minus 0.312, set dimension. So I need to take 62 thousandths off and work that down to 0 there. And I'll do that in 2 passes. Alright, I'm going to move the tailstock out of the way and the carriage. This is our movable jaw that we put the hole in the end. So that is just a little tight. I'm going to take another couple of passes on that. And Now I did not move my my cross slide, so I'll come in just a few thousandths. Now this length, after we get it threaded, we'll put it in the 5/16 collet and cut this to length. I just want to be sure that fits in there now. Alright, I'm going to get the change gears in so that we can start cutting the threads. Before we actually cut our threads, I need to give a little thread relief right up here at this housing, and I'm simply using my parting tool. And I'm going to come in and just give about 40 thousandths worth of thread clearance in there. Now we'll put our threading tool in. This is high-speed steel, ground to the correct angle. Bring our cross slide into just where it touches. And set the dial to 0. Set the compound to 0. Got the cross slide set at 0. I'm going to make a quick or small scratch pass and double check to be sure I got the right gears in. And that is 24 threads per inch. So we'll advance our compound at 0. As Mr. Lipton would say, a little bit of oil. Wait for the number to come around. Even number threads, I can engage on any number on the dial. When the tip cutting tool gets into that thread relief I just cut, back that out. Bring this back to 0. Advance our compound. And I'm going to pull you in a little tighter. And engage. And hopefully you can see in the video that our thread is being cut. Disengage, back off the compound. The cross slide. Back to 0 on the cross slide. Advance the compound. Wait for the next number to come around. Now, as long as I don't touch any of my dials, I'll be perfectly fine to back this out of the way. And I'm going to get our piece. We're starting to get close now. It's starting, but it's still a bit tight. So back to 0. And I'm not going to go near as much this time. Start getting this close. We're going to check between each one, and this is just a brass brush that I'm cleaning the threads off with. It's a good fit. It's still just a little snug. I'm not going to advance the compound. I'm just going to make a spring pass on that and let it clean that thread out. And we'll touch that with a file just to knock some of the sharp edges off. And that's going to be a good thread, good tight thread, good snug thread. All right, I'm going to take this out of this collet now and put it into 5/16 collet to hold around these threads, and we'll start working on this end down here. I have the workpiece now. I have a 5/16 collet, and we're going to come into the back side of the collet and leave just a little bit sticking out, enough that we can measure there, and load the collet into the chuck. Now when we drilled this hole, remember how particular we were when this was up in the housing, in the vise housing, vise base, that we went in the depth in here, and I have checked that. That is exactly a ½ inch deep. That's how long we want this shaft right here. We want the bottom of this shaft, or end of this shaft, to bottom out in there. So I have the parting tool in here again. And I'm going to pull this up right to where the threads start. Zero out my z-axis and move 500 thousandths. And then very gently remove that excess right here. I'm going to take a file and just ease that edge right there just a little bit. Now this should bottom out on that. All right. Next thing we want is a groove cut into this that will match that where we're going to put the dog end set screw in there. Now we can take our measurements, which I feel comfortable with, before we drill that hole, or we can come right here, mark that up with a Sharpie a little bit, put that on there, and tighten our set screw down just enough so that we can get a mark on there. Now that shows me very clearly where that should go. My parting tool is not quite as wide as the dog head on that set screw. So I'm going to take a groove, then I'll set it back over there and look again. The difference between these two is, remember this was 250 thousandths, and the plans say the groove depth, the final depth should be 170. So that's 80 thousandths off. So if we come in 40 thousandths on each diameter, on each side, or I'll zero out the X, and my DRO is set to read on the diameter, so we'll take 80 thousandths off of that. Once we touch right there, we'll read 80 thousandths, and there's 80. Now, put that back on, and actually look down in that hole. I can see I need to take off of this shoulder, off the inside shoulder, just a little bit. And I will look one more time, but I'm sure that's got it. All right, that looks good. I think we're ready to go back to the workbench and start some assembly. We actually have one more step we can do while we're over here on the lathe. We need our little cross pin that'll go into the screw, and I've got a 3/16 collet now. And all I'm going to do over here, I already have these cut to length. I'm going to put that in the collet. And we're going to round off the ends of it and polish it up a little bit. And I still have the change gears in there but we're not turning anything. So what I'm going to do now is just round this end off. Alright, I'm going to turn that around and do the same thing to the other end. Alright, we have one more operation to make before we're ready to put it together. I think it was just one more. I have our screw in there in a collet now, turned around in the other direction so that we've got our end out. I've got it tightened in the collet block. And just like we've done all the other situations, we're going to find the center. Alright, now we're ready to put our hole. We've got center from the end and center on the Y. This pin is what did I say? 3/16. Yeah. 3/16. So I'm drilling it a 64th less than 3/16. And while this is right here, I'm going to check the pin and see if I do have my 3/16 reamer. Yes, it's going to need to be reamed. All right, and I'm going to ream it out to a thousandths under. 3/16 minus the thousandths. Now that's got some pretty wicked burrs on it right there. So while we've got it right here in the mill, we're going to use a counter board just to clean those up a little bit. And I was careful to have my collet block right at the edge of the mill jaw so I can flip it 180 degrees. Now should the pin be loose in that, all I'll do is just, as Mr. Keith Rucker says, I'll disturb a little section right there, but I believe that's going to be, yeah, that's going to be a good press fit in there. So we'll go back to the workbench now and start the assembly.